Okay, so we're finished with part one of Maniac Magee, and now we're going to be looking at what happens next. He left the Bill family not because he doesn't love them, but because he loves them so much he doesn't want them to be in danger, he doesn't want them to be hurt, he doesn't want anything bad to happen to anyone because of him. So he's very protective, and he's very protective of those he loves. And so he walked out of town, and now we're going to figure out what happens next. Chapter 22. If you were the baby buffalo at the Elmwood Park Zoo, maybe it would have gone something like this. You wake up. You have breakfast, compliments of mother's milk. You mosey on over to the lean-to. Surprise! A strange new animal in there. Bigger than you, but a lot smaller than Mom. Hair, but only on top of its head. Sitting in the straw, munching on a carrot like Mom does. Every morning, same thing. You get to expect it. Some mornings you forget Mom's milk and head right on over to the lean-to. The creature offers you a carrot, but all you know how to deal with is milk. You nuzzle the new funny-smelling, hairy-headed animal. It nuzzles you back. Mom doesn't seem to mind. After the nuzzling, the stranger climbs over the fence and goes away, not to return until that night. Only one morning the stranger falls from the fence and lies on the ground on the other side. It doesn't move. You try to poke your nose through the chain links, but you can't reach. You can only watch. Only watch. The old man was bumping through the zoo in the park pickup when he spotted the body clumped outside the buffalo pen. He wheeled over, got out. A kid! At first he could only stare. At the body, then at the baby bison, whose large brown eyes seemed to be watching them both. The mother came lumbering over, nodding, as if to confirm, a kid. The kid looked terrible. His clothes were scraps, rags. Wherever his body showed through, it was bony and dirty and scratched. The two bison, staring, seemed to say, well, do something. The old man gathered his own bones and muscles as best he could and managed to hoist the kid and get him into the pickup. He laid him on the seat, bent his legs so he could close the door. He knew he should take the kid straight to the hospital or a doctor, someplace official, someplace right. But the pickup just sort of steered itself back to the bandshell, and there he was lugging the kid into the baseball equipment room. The season was over by now, but the army green burlap bag still stood ready for the next ump to call, "Play ball!" He yanked out a couple of chest protectors and laid the kid down, careful with his head. At least he was breathing. Though it wasn't cold, it seemed as if the kid ought to be covered, so the old man took his winter work jacket off the hook and laid that over him. Then he waited and watched. With trembling, dusty fingers, he touched the kid's limp, scrawny hand. He had never really touched a kid's hand before. Hey. The kid's voice was barely a squeak, but it threw him back. He dropped the hand. Where am I? The old man cleared his throat. The bandshell. The bandshell? In the back. Equipment room. The kid's eyes squinted, blinked. And you? What about me? Who are you? Grayson. Grayson. Do I know you? He got up. Guess you do now. He went to his hot plate, heated up some water, and made some chicken noodle cup of soup. He gave it to the kid, who was sitting up now. You want a spoon? He looked as though he could hardly lift the cup. He held it with both hands and gulped it down. Huh? He said. Never mind. You still hungry? The kid flopped back down. A little. Wait here, said Grayson, and left. 10 minutes later, he was back with a Zepp, a large. It's kind of like a Subway. It took the kid less time to polish it off than it had taken Grayson to get it. He told the kid not to eat so fast that he'd get sick. The kid nodded. Grayson said, Where'd you get them scratches? Oh, some picker bush. What were you doing there? Hiding. Hiding? Who from? Some kids. Where? The kid pointed. Somewhere out there. Some other town. He crossed his legs Indian style on the chest protector. "Can I ask you a favor?" "Shoot." "Can we go somewhere and get some butterscotch crimpets?" Grayson squawked. "Crimpets? You still hungry?" "For them I am." Grayson threw the greasy Zep wrapper into the wastebasket. "I don't know. Maybe you ought to do something for me first." "Like what?" "Like tell me your name." "I'm Jeffrey Magee." "And where you live?" "Well, I did live on Sycamore Street, 728. "Did?" "I guess. I don't anymore." The old man stared. "You said Sycamore." "Yep." "Ain't that the East End?" "Yep." With his fingernail, he scraped a patch of dirt off the kid's forearm. He stared at it. "What are you doing?" the kid asked. "Seeing if you was white under there." Neither spoke for a while. At last the kid said, "Anything else you want to ask me?" The old man shrugged. "Guess not." "Oh, come on, don't stop asking." "I'm asked out." "How about the zoo, huh? Do you want to know what I was doing at the zoo? At the buffalo pen?" The old man sighed. "Okay, what?" "I was living there." "With the buffaloes?" "Yep, with the buffaloes." "You like buffaloes?" "It was dark when I got there. I thought it was the deer pen. They switched the deer and the buffaloes around last month." "Okay with me. I got along better with the buffaloes anyway." "Well, I'll tell you one thing," the old man sniffed. "You sure do smell like one." The kid laughed. They both laughed. When they finally calmed down, the kid said, "Any chance of those crimpets now?" Grayson reached for the pickup keys. "Let's go." So Grayson seems a bit shocked that Maniac lived in the East End. And so this is something that he doesn't understand. That's just very unusual. And Grayson is taking care of Maniac. He's not, you can tell by the way he speaks. If you compare the way Grayson speaks, not tone of voice, but the way Grayson speaks with the way Amanda speaks, you can tell that Grayson doesn't seem to be as educated as some people would be. He has very simple sentences he said when he speaks, even more simple than Jeffrey. And so that should kind of give us an understanding, just a little understanding of Grayson's background. All right, chapter 23. Grayson got the crimpets all right. He brought a whole box of 3-packs. With 10 packs to a box, there were 30. Start over. Grayson got the crimpets all right. He bought a whole box of 3-packs. With 10 packs to a box, that was 30 butterscotch crimpets. Maniac thought he must have climbed out of that buffalo pen right into heaven. Then Grayson took Maniac home. Home for the old man was the 2 Mills YMCA. He lived in a room on the 3rd floor, but he didn't take Maniac up there. He took him downstairs to the locker room. He got him a towel and a cake of soap, told him to take off his rags, and pointed the way to the showers. Maniac stayed in the shower for an hour. He hadn't done this since his last bath with the little ones. He smiled at the thought of them shrieking and splashing. The shower needles stung as scratches, but it was a good welcome back to town stinging. When Maniac finally forced himself from the shower, he found the old man waiting with clothes. Grayson's clothes. "I called the U.S. Army in to haul them buffalo rags away," he said. "They came in with the gas masks on, and they used tongs to pick 'em up, and then they put 'em in a steel box, and they took the box away to bury it at the bottom of the first mine shaft they come to." Maniac couldn't stop laughing. Neither could Grayson, especially when he got a load of the kid drowning in his clothes. Okay, so Grayson lives at the YMCA. Now, we don't have one of those around here, but in the cities, the YMCA, especially back during this time, was a place that you could stay very cheaply, almost like a hotel, except a hotel you usually stay for one night. A YMCA, you could rent a room out for a longer period. And because they have a gym there, they usually had a showers, a place where you could clean up, and then you would have just this tiny little room to stay in. And so that's where Grayson stays. So we know Grayson speaks some pretty simple sentences. He doesn't have like an apartment or a home that he lives in, but he stays in a little room that he rents out at the YMCA. So that lets us know that Grayson doesn't have a lot. An hour later, after a minor shopping spree, Maniac had clothes of his own. For the rest of the afternoon, they cruised around town, talking and eating crimpets. "So," said the old man, "now what are you gonna do?" Maniac thought it over. "How about a job? I could work for the park like you." Grayson didn't answer. He said, "Where you think you're gonna stay?" Maniac's answer was prompt. "The baseball room. It's perfect." A tiny idea was beginning to worm its way into Grayson's head. He could barely feel it as it brushed by all the claptrap in his brain. He ignored it. He said, "What about school?" Maniac was silent. Some butterscotch icing had stayed behind on a wrapper. He scooped it up and mopped it with his finger, wishing it were Mrs. Beale's and not his own. Grayson, who was not comfortable asking questions, was even less comfortable waiting for answers. "I said, what about school?" Maniac turned to him. "What about it?" "You gotta go. You're a kid, ain't you?" "I'm not going." "But you gotta, don't you? They'll make you." "Not if they don't find me." The old man just looked at him for a while with a mixture of puzzlement and recognition, as though the fish he had landed might be the same one he had thrown away long before. "Why?" he said. Maniac felt why more than he knew why. It had to do with homes and families and schools, and how a school seems sort of like a big home, but only a day home, because then it empties out, and you can't stay there at night because it's not really a home, and you could never use it as your address, because an address is where you stay at night, where you walk right in the front door without knocking, where everybody talks to each other and uses the same toaster. So all the other kids would be heading for their homes, their night homes, each of them, hundreds, flocking from school like birds from a tree, scattering across town, each breaking off to his or her own place, each knowing exactly where to land. School, home. No, he was not going to have one without the other. "If you try to make me," he said, "I'll just start running." Grayson said nothing. What the kid said actually made him feel good, though he had no idea why, and the brushing little worm of a notion was beginning to tickle him now. He kept on driving. So Maniac doesn't want to go to school if he doesn't have a home. He doesn't want to be partially normal. He wants to be fully normal. He wants to have a school to go to in the day and a home to go to at night. And he wants a place where you don't have to knock when you walk in, place where you belong. He wants a home to belong to. What's interesting, and this kind of goes over our heads today, especially as people who don't live in a city, but we would know if we were reading this book, understanding the time period when Grayson is living, along with Maniac. The YMCA is not much of a home either. It's a place that you rent out, but it's not really a place to belong to. So Grayson doesn't really have a place where he belongs. Maniac doesn't really have a place where he belongs. And now the two of them are together. So we can ask ourselves, what do we think is going to happen next? And for that, we go to chapter 24. They got back to the bandshell just as they finished the last of the crimpets. Grayson looked at his watch. "Guess it's time to quit the job I never did today. Time for dinner, too." Grayson was joking, but Maniac was serious when he piped, "Great, where to?" Dumbfounded, the old man drove back out of the park to the nearest diner, where he sat with a cup of coffee, while the boy wolfed down meatloaf and gravy, mashed potatoes, zucchini, salad, and coconut custard pie. Grayson had a way of jumping into a subject without warning. It was during Maniac's dessert that he abruptly said, "Them black people, they eat mashed potatoes too?" Maniac thought he was kidding. Then he realized he wasn't. Sure, Mrs. Bill used to have potatoes a lot, mashed in every other way. Mrs. Who? Mrs. Bill. Do you know the Bills of 728 Sycamore Street? The old man shook his head. Well, they were my family. I had a mother and a father and a little brother and a sister my age and a dog. My own room, too. Grayson stared out the diner window as if digesting the information. How about meatloaf? Huh? They eat that too? Sure, meatloaf too. And peas and corn. You name it. Cake? Maniac beamed. Oh man, you kidding? Mrs. Bill makes the best cakes in the world. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Toothbrushes. They use them? Maniac fought not to smile. Absolutely. We all have our own toothbrushes hanging in the bathroom. I know that, said Grayson, impatient. But is theirs the same as ours? No difference that I could see. You didn't drink out of the same glass. Absolutely we did. The information seemed to shock the old man. Maniac laid down his fork. Grayson, they're just regular people, like us. I was never in a house of theirs. Well, I'm telling you, it's the same. There's bathtubs and refrigerators and rugs and TVs and beds. Grayson was wagging his head. Ain't that something? Ain't that something? So we see here, remember we said this story probably takes place in the 70s. Grayson is called, he's an old man. So Grayson would have been someone who was raised in an even much more different time than this. This time is different than our own time. But Grayson would have grown up in an even more different time where black people and white people didn't interact with one another. Black people and white people did not go to each other's houses. They didn't hang out. You didn't have friends of other races. And especially a prejudice that a lot of people would have had during his time was you didn't eat or drink using the same dishes as someone from another race. And so Grayson is shocked by this. Grayson has prejudices against people, as a lot of people his age would have had during that time. And Maniac is telling him that the Bill family are just like regular people. They're regular people. There's no difference between white people and black people. And that's kind of a shock to someone like Grayson. And this is where we see that one of the good things about Maniac not picking up on the normal ways people view things, one of the good things about that is he doesn't pick up on their prejudices. And instead, he views all people the same. It was after dark when they got back to the baseball equipment room. The worm in Grayson's head had long since ceased to be a tiny tickle. It was now a maddening itch. As with all such itchworms, it would exit by only one route, the mouth. So when he thinks something, he says it. He said, I was thinking, maybe you want to come over to my place? This here floor is pretty hard. He tapped his foot to show how hard it was. The grizzled gray old park hand could never know how much Maniac was tempted, or how deeply the offer touched him. Neither could Maniac explain that the bad luck he always seemed to have with parents had led him to the conclusion that he'd better stick to himself. So Maniac figures, my parents died, my aunt and uncle wouldn't talk to one another, I got the Bill family in danger, it's better not to get attached to someone. Oh, it's not so bad here, he said. Look. He lay down on the chest protectors and closed his eyes. Ah, just like a mattress. I can feel myself dozing off already. And then, not wanting to hurt the old man's feelings, he quickly added, Hey, I told you everything about me. How about you? He pulled Grayson's coat over himself. A bedtime story. Grayson snorted. Story? I don't know no stories. Sure you do, Maniac prodded. About yourself. You know about you. Everybody has a story. Not me. Grayson was edging for the door. I ain't got no story. I ain't nobody. I work at the park. You line baseball fields. Yep, I do that. You live at the Y. You drive the park pickup. You like butterscotch crumpets. Grayson shook his head. Not as much as you. I was just eating them to be friendly, so you wouldn't have to eat them all by yourself. And there's another thing about you, Maniac joked. You're a liar. They both laughed. Grayson opened the door. Wait, called Maniac. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid? Grayson paused in the doorway. He looked out into the night. A baseball player, he said. He turned out the light and closed the door. We'll stop there for today.